The evening began as any ordinary night at an upscale Manhattan restaurant. Soft lighting, elegant decor, and the gentle hum of chatter in the air. But little did anyone know, this was about to become a night that would change one waitress's life forever. A story that would soon spread far beyond the restaurant's pristine marble floors, igniting conversations across the world. Behind the bar, in the corner booth, sat none other than Barron Trump, the youngest son of President Donald Trump. Known for his quiet, reserved nature, Barron was rarely seen out in public, let alone in a restaurant like this. Yet here he was, dining alone, in the heart of New York City, under the watchful eyes of the staff, who couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and awe. But no one knew that this unassuming dinner would lead to a moment of pure emotion, a moment that would shatter preconceived notions about the Trump family. For Samantha, the waitress assigned to Barron's table, it was just another shift. She didn't think twice about the VIP patron she was serving. As she approached the table to clear the dishes, she noticed the check left behind. Something was different. In all her years of waiting tables, she had never encountered a moment like this before. She hesitated. The numbers on the check didn't just add up to a payment, they told a deeper, more touching story. Tears filled her eyes, and she knew that what she had just discovered would change the way she viewed not just Barron, but the power of kindness in the most unexpected places. What did Barron Trump leave behind? What was it about this simple check that moved Samantha to tears? You'll never guess how a small act of generosity turned a regular night into a life-altering experience. This is a story that will surprise, inspire, and leave you thinking long after the last word is spoken. Stay with us, because you won't want to miss how the smallest of gestures can change everything. As Samantha walked toward Barron Trump's table to clear the dishes, she could feel the eyes of the other waitstaff on her. It wasn't every day that a high-profile figure like Barron Trump graced the restaurant, and there was an unspoken air of anticipation in the room. The youngest son of President Donald Trump was no stranger to the spotlight, but tonight, he had come in alone, dressed casually, almost blending in with the other patrons, yet unmistakably carrying the aura of his family name. Samantha wasn't one to get starstruck. She had worked in New York's top restaurants long enough to be accustomed to celebrities, politicians, and the occasional billionaire, but Barron's quiet, almost solitary presence intrigued her. There was something different about him, a certain calmness that contrasted with the bombastic personalities she had seen in her years of service. As she approached his table, she noticed that he wasn't on his phone, unlike many young people today. Instead, he appeared to be lost in his own thoughts, enjoying the meal, and perhaps the rare moment of privacy. As Samantha cleared the last of his plates and placed the check on the table, she didn't think much of it at first. It was a typical evening, after all, but what happened next would forever change her perception of the man sitting at that table. She glanced down at the bill to confirm the total, but what she saw stunned her, almost too much to process at once. The check, which had seemed ordinary at first glance, was now a symbol of something far more profound. As she scanned the bill, Samantha noticed an additional note written by Barron, scribbled in neat handwriting on the edge of the receipt. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the words, "For the hard work and kindness, thank you. Pay it forward." And then, the most unexpected part of all, the tip. It was the largest tip Samantha had ever seen in her career, a sum so generous it was nearly impossible to believe. Her eyes widened, not just at the number, but at the sheer thoughtfulness behind it. Barron had left a tip that could cover an entire month's rent for some people, yet it was more than the money itself. The message he left was everything: pay it forward. The concept of paying it forward wasn't new, but coming from someone like Barron Trump, whose family was often at the center of controversy, it hit differently. Samantha stood frozen for a moment, clutching the check in her hand, struggling to comprehend the gravity of what had just happened. Here she was, a waitress in a bustling city, serving a man she had only ever seen on TV, and now she was holding a gesture of kindness that felt almost surreal. The tip wasn't just a reflection of his wealth, it was an invitation to do something good, to spread kindness in a world that often seemed to lack it. As the night continued, Samantha found herself replaying the moment in her head over and over again. She had seen people in high places act arrogantly, demanding more than their fair share, but Barron Trump's quiet generosity left her speechless. She knew the media portrayed his family as out of touch, living in a world of privilege and controversy, yet here he was, quiet, humble, and offering a message of compassion. The more Samantha thought about it, the more she realized how rare it was for anyone, especially someone in Barron's position, to extend such a gesture without expecting anything in return. The restaurant wasn't a cheap spot, and the tip wasn't a small act of charity, it was a bold, intentional choice, a choice to make a difference. What was even more striking was that Barron had done this without making a scene, without seeking attention, without flaunting his wealth. He had simply given, in a way that many would never even notice, but one that would have a ripple effect far beyond that quiet table. Samantha's emotions swelled as she approached her manager, still holding the check, trying to process what had just occurred. "I don't know what to say," she told him, her voice shaky. It's not what I expected. I thought people like him would be different, but he's different. He really is. Her manager, a man who had been working in restaurants for decades, nodded slowly. It's not always about the wealth or the status, Sam. Sometimes, it's about what someone chooses to do with that privilege. And maybe, just maybe, Barron Trump is trying to do something good in his own way. Don't let the media or his family define him. People are more complex than that. Samantha walked away, still holding on to the receipt as though it were a priceless treasure. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the message. Kindness, humility, and the importance of paying it forward. She knew that she had just experienced something rare, and no matter where her life took her next, she would never forget the night she served Barron Trump, and how, in the most unexpected of places, she found a reminder that goodness can be found in even the most surprising individuals. As Samantha stood there, staring at the check Barron Trump had left behind, she could hardly breathe. The night had unfolded in ways she never expected, but this moment, this act of unexpected kindness, had shaken her to her core. What did it mean for someone like Barron, so often in the shadows of political controversy, to offer such a profound gesture? What could it possibly mean for the world that someone from his family, someone she had been taught to view with suspicion, could act so differently from the public narrative? She walked back to the kitchen, her legs shaky. The bustling kitchen staff barely noticed her as she passed by, but the look on her face, her eyes wide and filled with emotion, caught the attention of the chef, who raised an eyebrow in curiosity. She couldn't contain the lump in her throat any longer. She held out the check to her manager, the piece of paper that would forever alter her perception of people in the limelight. "Sam." "What is it?" her manager asked, noticing her trembling hands. Samantha could hardly speak, but her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "He left me this. He left a tip that could change someone's life. And that message, pay it forward, it's not what I expected." Her manager looked at the bill. For a moment, his expression softened, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. It was not just the amount, it was the gesture itself, an undeniable statement about human decency. The manager had worked in high-end restaurants for decades, and even he was caught off guard by Barron's humility. "I've seen all sorts of people come and go in this place, Sam," he said quietly. "Some of them are kind, some of them are entitled, some just want to make a scene. But what Barron did, that's rare. Maybe it's a reminder that we shouldn't judge people by their family name or the stories we hear on TV. Maybe this world needs a little more of what he just showed us." Samantha wiped away a tear, still trying to make sense of the overwhelming emotions she was feeling. She had entered the restaurant that night expecting nothing more than a typical shift. But now, she had witnessed something that made her question everything she thought she knew about the people in power, about wealth, about kindness, and about how small acts of goodness could transcend the harsh judgments that others cast on them. It was as if the words Barron had written on the bill had transcended their physical meaning. The note, simple and humble, had left an indelible mark on her soul. "Pay it forward." The phrase had always been a common saying, but in this context, coming from someone who could easily have chosen to be self-serving, it took on a whole new weight. She wasn't just being asked to do something nice for another person. She was being invited to change the narrative about kindness, to move beyond stereotypes, and to see beyond the facade of fame and wealth. Later that night, after the restaurant had quieted down and the staff began cleaning up, Samantha found herself standing by the window, lost in thought. She gazed out at the New York City skyline, the bright lights of the city reflecting her mixed emotions: doubt, disbelief, but also hope. She had worked hard in the city, doing her best to be kind, to serve with a smile, but she had never encountered a moment like this before. Barron Trump, in his quiet way, had shown her a side of him that no one would have expected. And it was more than just the tip or the money, it was the quiet, deliberate choice to do something good, to leave behind a message for the world. In the days that followed, the restaurant buzzed with whispers. It wasn't long before the story of Barron Trump's visit, his tip, his note, spread like wildfire. But rather than the usual gossip about his family or the Trump's controversial moments, this story was different. People were talking about Barron's generosity, about the thoughtfulness behind his actions, and how it had affected Samantha. Some people, who had initially dismissed Barron as just another member of a wealthy family, started to rethink their assumptions. It was as though, in one quiet, unexpected act, Barron had turned the tide on how the world perceived him. For Samantha, it wasn't about the attention or the story spreading. It was about the impact Barron had made on her, the lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her life. She had witnessed firsthand how a single act of kindness could change hearts and minds, shatter expectations, and inspire others to pay it forward. She knew that her perspective on wealth, fame, and kindness had been irrevocably changed. Barron Trump's words, written in simple ink on a check, had touched her in a way she would never forget. And so, the evening that began as an ordinary shift in a New York City restaurant became the defining moment of Samantha's life, a moment that would forever serve as a reminder that no matter the name, the family, or the headlines, people could still choose to do good. Barron Trump, despite everything, had proven that kindness could come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, the smallest actions could create the biggest ripples in the world. In the days following Barron Trump's visit, the restaurant where Samantha worked became a place of quiet reflection. Staff members exchanged whispers and smiles, some still processing the surprising turn of events. Samantha, though, was far from finished with the impact of that evening. It wasn't just the gesture itself that had left an imprint on her, it was the revelation that even in a world that often feels divided, there was room for small acts of kindness to rewrite the narrative. As Samantha went about her days, cleaning tables and serving guests, the words Barron had written on the check echoed in her mind, "Pay it forward." Those three simple words were now a call to action in her life. She wasn't just holding on to the generosity of a man who was often viewed through a harsh lens, she was embracing the lesson he had unknowingly given her. The lesson that every moment, no matter how small, could be an opportunity to make the world a better place. That kindness didn't need to be flashy, it didn't need to be loud, it just needed to be real. What Barron Trump had left behind wasn't just a tip, it was a ripple in the ocean of humanity, small but profound enough to create waves. Samantha realized that it was easy to assume that people, especially those in positions of power, were disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people. But that night, Barron had shown her something far more valuable, that empathy could transcend barriers. That kindness could bridge divides. That a single act could change someone's perception of the world. Samantha's heart swelled with inspiration. Every person she encountered from that moment on was treated with a little more patience, a little more care. She began taking those extra few moments to hold doors open for strangers, to smile at people who seemed like they needed it. She understood now that it wasn't about the grand gestures, it was the little things that mattered most. And Barron's act of generosity had sparked a flame in her, one that refused to go out. The ripple effect didn't stop with Samantha. Slowly, but surely, the story of Barron's quiet generosity began to spread. People in the community began talking about it, passing on the lesson of paying it forward. A few weeks later, when Samantha was walking through a busy street in the city, she saw a man handing out free coffee to the homeless. He smiled at her as if he knew something that had passed between them. She couldn't help but smile back, feeling the warmth of the moment. It was an unspoken connection, one that had started with Barron Trump's simple act of kindness and had somehow found its way to every corner of the city. By the time Samantha's shift ended that evening, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't known before. She realized that, in the midst of life's chaos, it was moments like this, small, quiet, but meaningful, that truly shaped the world. And it wasn't just the wealthy or the famous who had the power to make a difference. Each person, no matter their circumstances, could choose kindness. Each person could make a choice to be the spark that lit a flame in others. Barron Trump had left more than a generous tip that night. He had given Samantha a gift that she would carry with her always, the reminder that kindness doesn't belong to the privileged few. It belongs to everyone. All it takes is the willingness to act. The willingness to choose goodness when the world tries to pull us in the other direction. And it wasn't just about one person, it was about all of us. The way we live our lives, the way we treat others, and the way we respond to the world's challenges, it all matters. As Samantha locked the doors of the restaurant that night and stepped out into the New York City streets, she had a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was living with intention, driven by a desire to make the world a little brighter, a little kinder, one small act at a time. And that's the true power of kindness. It's the power to ignite change, to transform hearts, and to remind us all that, no matter our background or circumstances, we all have the ability to make a difference. So, what are you going to do today? Will you let Barron's unexpected kindness be a catalyst for your own? Will you take a moment to pay it forward, to show compassion in a world that so often feels divided? Remember, kindness doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be genuine. And if we all chose to live with kindness as our guide, imagine the ripple effect we could create. One act at a time, we can make the world a better place, just as Barron Trump's simple gesture made Samantha's world a little brighter. You never know, your small act of kindness today might just change someone's life tomorrow.